Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Interesting. Usually that intro doesn't clip like that for me. It has for some folks here on Game Over. We're going to look into that and make sure that it runs more smoothly. But welcome to Game Over Montreal and Winnipeg. I'm here with Ty Dilello from Game Over Winnipeg after a 4-0 Winnipeg Jets victory, which I think felt a lot closer than that. We're going to get Ty's opinion on it first, or as well. But before we get too deep into it, for those folks who don't know, Ty just had like a huge moment recently with his team. He competed in the Briar in Newfoundland, right?
Newfoundland provincials. Yep, I was the import from Winnipeg. You're allowed one import, and I was playing with three Newfoundlanders this past weekend. Yeah.
And how'd you do?
We got one of these, the fabled Purple Heart, which you get if you win a provincial playdown to go to the Briar. So we went on a pretty good tear. We went, I think, 10-1 on the weekend. We rattled off 8 straight games. We knocked off the top seed 3 straight times.
Damn.
The championship. Yeah, it was a little bit of luck was on our side, a little bit of good fortune, and we all played pretty well to pull through in the end. So yeah, Briar's next month, end of February in Kelowna, BC. So we're all looking forward to playing in front of fans, in front of people on TSN all week. It's gonna be a blast.
Yeah, it's so cool. And what an amazing moment. I honestly can't even imagine what it felt like because my my greatest sports memory was winning like a city championship in house league soccer when I was like 11. So not comparing to being a full-on adult and winning, like that's so cool. That's so cool. And then knocking off the top seed 3 times, that's incredible. So for those folks in the chat, send some congrats Ty's way because that is an incredible accomplishment and I think it's super damn cool. And it's nice to have someone who's happy after tonight's game because I'm looking at the chat here on our Montreal channel and folks are not too pleased. And also they're pointing out that I have become the jinx. And when you combine the fact that when I had first launched Game Over Montreal, the Canadiens went and had their worst season ever, it is feeling like it's my fault. I haven't seen a win in the host chair since December 17th, and I'm supposed to be on with Kay on Thursday. Ty, do you think I should sit that one out?
I did see that stat that got, I think, either posted on our Discord or on Blue Sky, and yeah, I don't know if Montreal is kind of in a playoff race right now. It might be important to the team if maybe you just hold off until they get a win, when you're hosting, because you guys are, like I said, right in the thick of it, and they kind of need every little, every bit of luck they can get right now. So yeah, maybe sit out Thursday or not. It's up
Yeah.
to you, the boss.
I mean, maybe it's just if I'm hosting, right? Maybe if I'm just there to help Kay out and be a guest, it'll be a little bit easier. But I got to tell you, it's pretty rough. And the fact that this game felt very similar to the Leafs game, where they came out and the Canadiens looked awesome, and then everything starts to fall apart. And then they ended up playing like overall pretty damn well, but they couldn't get it back. It was just too much. Let's get into the game a little bit, but before we do, I gotta remind everyone to check out Hyperdrive Hockey. There was a new episode out yesterday. Yes, yesterday. And there's some new clips up there as well on the Game Over Network channel, which you can find by clicking Game Over Montreal right below this video. Or if you're listening on the podcast, head to YouTube and search at Game Over Network. That'll take you right there. And you can check out an amazing show that we've built for you with 3 hosts here from Quebec, broadcasting in English in their second language, and it gives you an insight into how Quebec does things differently. Every single region in Canada has its own unique flavor, but because of that language barrier, I think a lot of English Canadians are missing out on the cool coverage that happens here in Quebec. Now you're going to see it with Hyperdrive Hockey. So check it out. It's every Monday and Thursday this year, and it's really fun. It's a really damn fun show, and I really enjoy the Thursday episodes where they have a segment called Not Even Sorry, where they pit 2 Game Over hosts against each other, and they can choose to build up or tear down and have some hot takes and go back and forth. It's really fun. I really suggest you check it out. There's nothing else like it out there. All right, let's get into this first period here, and I guess before I do that, I should tell you all what we're going to talk about. We are going to touch on the Guhle injury. We're going to do that in the second segment. We're going to talk about Mark Scheifele also in the second segment. But we got to start out with what happened in this game. And at the end, also, we're going to talk about The officiating in the game, we're going to leave that for now. We're going to leave it out of the narrative as we recap the game because it's not a single game thing. And later on, we're also going to talk about a conversation that Ty and his buddies and teammates there at the Briar had and how it kind of like stoked them into victory. So that's going to be really fun. And if you stick around to the very end, we're going to do our Q&A with the audience if you want to ask something that's off topic. If you have something to contribute as we go along, we will be going through the chat and we'll shout you out. If you have a cool idea, it's just the off topic stuff, save it for the end. Even if it's not hockey, you can ask a question. Doesn't matter. We'll be here to answer. All right, Ty. Did Patrick Laine invite this result by joking around and saying that Hellebuyck got the patty flu last time that he had an opportunity to play them?
He's it's he kind of talked his way definitely before the last game. I'm not sure if he said anything before this one, but obviously Hellebuyck played a pretty good game. The last time these two played against each other, and then tonight it was more of the same from Connor. So you don't want to give the best goalie in the league any extra motivation perhaps to play well against an old teammate or whatnot. And I think there's a lot of still mutual respect between Patrick Laine and Connor Hellebuyck. It's great to see Laine back in the lineup. Obviously tonight was a tough game for him. And I gotta say, that first period, I thought this game might have a little different of an outcome, and maybe I was gonna be a little bit quieter on Blue Sky during the game, but yeah, I don't know. It was after that first period, or after I guess the Jets got the 1-1 goal, they really kind of settled down and got back to their game, but I still thought Montreal played a pretty good hockey game despite the loss tonight. I thought they were. They played kind of like a playoff team, I thought, for most of the night. So kind of hats off to Montreal fans and your side. This is it's kind of impressive to see Montreal, play this well. I think this rebuild is happening a lot quicker than I think a lot of people are anticipating.
Yeah, it definitely does feel that way. And I see Bernardo Saunier in the chat kind of echoes the sentiment that you said. He said, I feel like Montreal didn't even play bad. The Jets were just too good. And honestly, it's kind of boring that we're all gonna say the same thing, but that's how I saw it as well. I thought, like, especially, I think it was the first Jets goal, with Kyle Connor on the short side there, where Montembeault kind of, I guess, was late reacting. But I looked at that goal like 4 or 5 times, and I think almost at every step of the way, each Montreal Canadiens player played good defense on that goal. It's just the Jets find a way. They move the puck too quick. They're large. They just find spots. They find loose pucks quicker in that offensive zone. They're so unbelievably dangerous. I said it on Blue Sky during the game. There are moments when the Jets have the puck in the offensive zone. They just feel inevitable. It's like friggin' Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet. And I'm not saying that they're going to like walk all the way to the cup, but there are moments where when they're keyed in, it just feels like way too much for anyone.
Yeah, I think like a lot of pundits say the Jets, why they won't win is because they don't have that top end talent that Edmonton or Colorado has. But when that first line of Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, when they're playing well, like they produce almost more than anybody in the league. Like they're hot right now, and that's that's why they were so dangerous tonight. But those are three like very offensively gifted hockey players in kind of three different ways. They all kind of do a different piece of the puzzle that leads to them creating all these chances. And tonight it was on full display. Kyle Connor had a couple of goals. Mark Scheifele had a goal. Gabe Vilardi had 2 assists. Gabe Vilardi's now has, I believe, 49 points in 51 games. He's been very good, this season. And then it doesn't stop there. Like we got off, and then we have a player like Nikolai Ehlers, who would be a first-line player on, I would say, 75-80% of the teams in the league. Yep. Playing on our second line. He's a guy who's another like very high offensive threat, and probably our most skilled player, in the lineup. So the Jets are just very, very deep, and even with some injuries right now, we kind of have our lines a little bit shuffled. It hasn't really affected our offensive output. We're still producing dangerous chances pretty much every game these last 10 or 12 games. So very dangerous team offensively right now. The power play has been clicking all season. I think I saw a stat that if the Jets don't even score on the next 30 power plays, they're still leading the league in power play this year. So just a lot of things are kind of going well, for the Jets right now that make them, one of the league's top teams in the NHL this season.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where you combine the immense advantage of having Connor Hellebuck, who can weather that storm when the Jets aren't keyed in. Like I feel like early in the game, the Canadiens had them a little bit on their heels, and then with about 5 minutes left in the first period, the Jets were like, okay, let's turn this thing around. We're gonna turn this boat around. We're gonna take control of this game. But you can afford, or the Jets can afford to do that because they have Connor Hellebuck, and then you combine that with just like the depth of scoring talent that team has, and now as opposed to, I think a lot of the time when the Jets were like at their like peak or whatever, like even like the Paul Maurice years, they had the scoring talent, but the underlying numbers weren't there. And now, even just having the underlying numbers like kiss the top 15 teams and just stay there all season long, that's enough to make this team extraordinarily difficult to deal with.
Yeah, I just think our team's just gotten kind of deeper over it, like year by year. Obviously, we worked heavily on our defensive structure the last few years under Rick Bowness. Something that we probably lacked under Paul Maurice. And then since Scott Arneal's come on board, who was, Rick Bowness's, associate coach for the last 2 years, he's just kind of built, more and more off of that. Our players are more experienced. They're more like, they more believe in the system, because they're getting the results. It's really nice to see. I think we're all just a little bit skeptical still of the playoffs because they haven't been our friend the last couple of years. So I think if the Jets can kind of hopefully win the division, hopefully get a Calgary or Vancouver or whoever in the first round and not play like Vegas or Colorado right away. If we can get out of that first round, I think the Jets could be on the verge of a long playoff run hopefully, and especially if we see the Connor Hellebuck that we've seen all year. If that continues in the playoffs, I think this will be a very dangerous team, and I still think the Jets will make a couple moves near the deadline, picking up another center and another top four defenseman. I think our GM Cheveldayoff is going to push some chips into the middle and see if he can really bolster this team to go on a deep playoff run, because it's been a very, very exciting year so far.
Yeah, I can imagine. Hottest start in franchise history to start the year, and it just, I don't want to say it hasn't slowed down. It slowed down a little bit, but not that much. The Jets are still a wagon, and it's pretty impressive. And it's kind of the opposite for Montreal, right? We had that incredibly poor start to the year where everything went wrong. Injuries piled on injuries, and then the defense was like absolutely abysmal. And then things have really turned around to such an extreme degree that it's almost hard to believe it's real. Sorry, especially when you're me, and every time you do this show, they're losing. But it is incredible to see how these teams have taken a step this year, because the Jets have always been knocking at the door, but they haven't looked like a true contender for a while. And now they're right back in there, and it's really impressive. And it's surprising. I mean, maybe not that surprising, because I think people evaluated it pretty well day of, but how much the turnaround for the Jets has come from that Pierre-Luc Dubois deal with LA is amazing.
Yeah, that was a deal that we definitely like. It felt right away that we won the trade, and then once I thought as long as Velarde became a good player, I thought like it was kind of going to be a no-brainer, hands down. The Jets won, but then we're also seeing that depth from Iafallo, and Rasmus Kupari is now centering the third line. Had the empty net goal tonight. It really just really kind of shored up our depth, in the bottom six. And then getting a first line talent like Gabriel Velarde, who's been, just an unbelievable hockey player. He's just kind of, he's a player that can score kind of anywhere on the ice, but especially within 5 feet of the goal. He's very good in front of the net. He's very good with tips. And he's still not even hit his he has not even coming into his prime. I don't think he's young. He's only playing his first full injury-free season in about 5 or 6 years. I'm really excited the future of Velarde here in Winnipeg, and even more curious to see what his next contract's going to look like, because I think he'll get a significant bump up from his $3.5 million salary he's currently making. He's been a point per game player this year. He's going to cost the Jets a lot, but I think he's going to be worth every single penny. As he's someone I would definitely throw the bag at to keep him here for a long time. I think he likes it here. He likes his situation playing on the first line. We definitely won that trade, but Pierre-Luc Dubois has been very, very impressive in Washington. He had another goal tonight. I liked him when I was a Dubois fan when he was here in Winnipeg. I hope that he does well, he's happy or whatever, and it seems like he also found himself now in a good situation. I don't know what the hell that was in Los Angeles last year.
I don't think Los Angeles knows either.
But we thought they had this big centerman for 8 years and 1 year, and send you to Washington. Good for PLD. He's also pulled it together too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's wrap this segment there. We're gonna show you an ad here for a second for a great company called Bijou that's a sponsor for Game Over Montreal. So enjoy that, and we'll be back on the other side. Don't forget to like the stream, and if you really like us, hit the subscribe button because it really does help us out. And also go in if you're a Winnipeg fan, or even if you're not, slam the Game Over Montreal button below the video. Subscribe to Game Over Winnipeg as well, because we need some more eyes on that. And I guess actually to add to it before we go to the ad, I just remembered I wanted to say, a friend of the show and Game Over alumni, Liz Hood, used to always say, if you don't like Gabe Velarde, you don't like hockey very much. He's that kind of player. He's that cool. All right, here's Bijou. We are so excited to tell you about our new partner here at Game Over Montreal, a delightfully witchy goth and glam jewelry store making handcrafted art that varies from subtle silver to gold pieces to glamorous bespoke. Bijou is more than just a company. They've built a community through advocacy and a welcoming attitude that has made them an institution here in Montreal. Located in the historic Chateau Saint-Ambroise, Bijou also runs seasonal themed markets called Maleficarum Market, or Marché Maleficarum en français, where artisans from all over get together and showcase and sell their wares. Drop by 4000 Rue Saint-Ambroise, Suite 278, and say hi to Astrid and the Wicked team, or head to inchubijou.com and enhance your style. The next Maleficarum Market will be on the weekend of February 8th and 9th. We'll see you there. Now, let's get back to the show, but before you do, make sure you subscribe to Game Over Montreal, Game Over Network, and smash like on this video because it really helps us out. All right, we are back. I think the big story tonight coming out of this game for Montreal is obviously the Caden Guhle injury. I think that's what everyone's talking about in the chat. Even through our last segment, there were a bunch of people talking about who could be the defenseman who's called up. The assumption is it will be Jaden Struble. There was an update from the team saying that defenseman Caden Guhle sustained a lower body injury and will be evaluated on a daily basis. When they gave the update to Marty St. Louis on the bench, he looked really upset. So I'm glad that it says day-to-day basis. Maybe it was just he was upset he couldn't get in this game because it still felt winnable at that point. But daily basis is good for now, I think, because that looked real bad. The way he fell, I assume it was an ankle injury because his left ankle bent funny before he fell. But then after he fell, it looked like he was grabbing higher on his leg. But I didn't see his knee bend any way that would cause an injury. So I don't know what exactly happened there if it wasn't the ankle.
Yeah, it was kind of a nothing play. Like I kind of missed it when it first happened, just because it wasn't really where the puck was. But then after you saw the replay, you saw him leave the ice. It was a little bit, maybe nervous times for Montreal fans because you didn't really know if it was going to be something serious or something where he was going to come back to the game. It sounds like from this preliminary stuff from what Martin St. Louis said, it seems like it's not going to be worst case scenario, which is good. But I've been impressed with Caden Guhle's game this past year, and pretty much his time in the NHL so far. So hopefully it's not a long-term injury. I'm kind of curious to see who they'll call up to replace him, if it's Struble, I heard Reinbacher's back. He's back playing, I think, or going to be returning soon. So I'm kind of curious because Montreal does have kind of a backlog of defensive prospects, and it might be an opportunity for someone to get some NHL games and some important minutes. As Montreal is right in this thick of this playoff race, and a loss like Guhle, would be is not great on the back end for sure. The Jets lost Dylan Sandberg for a while, and it was a huge blow to our back end. So, fingers crossed, Goule's back sooner than later.
Yeah, it's been a rough sled for Guhle. It seems like every time he really starts to take off, there's something that goes wrong, and you know, some players go through stuff like this where it just seems like they get these random injuries, and people start labeling people injury prone or not. But I find so many injuries are random circumstance. It's tough to really label it that way. Although I should say K and MFM in the chat noted that the daily evaluation was deleted, that statement, and now it says further evaluation. So maybe it was just a miscommunication. But further evaluation makes sense. That to me says that they're waiting for swelling to go down before they can do some kind of scan, which is not great. So maybe not great. Bernardo Sonia says they should give Engstrom a chance, and I'm actually with you, Bernardo. I don't get a chance to watch the Laval Rocket as much as I wish I could, but from the people that I know do watch them regularly that I trust, they've been saying that Engstrom has really taken off after his first, like, I'd say month even in the American Hockey League. He adjusted really quickly to the smaller ice, and as Ty said, David Reinbacher came back into practice just the other day, which is big and very interesting, but I don't know if he's ready to be put in that kind of situation, because they definitely need somebody on the right side, because they want Matheson and Carrier, I'm assuming, to be their hard minutes matchup pairing. Then they have Hudson. They can continue trying Hudson on the right. He tried tonight, but that was with Guhle on a second pairing. Putting Struble there, I don't know. Jack-Eye could work, maybe, if they put Hudson on the right, but if they want to put Hudson back on the left, they need a righty, and I don't think Mayu can handle those minutes right now. Jaden Struble would have to play on his offside. Jack-Eye would have to play on his offside. Engstrom seems like the logical choice to me.
I'd be totally, yeah. I think his game in Laval's picked up the last few months, if I'm not mistaken. I think he has now about 20 points in 40 games. I think he's only 22. I'd like to see him, get a look, at least for a few games if Guhle is going to be out, and if it's going well, leave him in. If not, there's another defenseman you can call up that I think can go in that spot as well. So, totally on board with Enstrom coming up, and probably best to have Reinbacher, play a little bit with Laval too and get him up to game speed, because you kind of want to see what you have, and Reinbacher. Very high pick, very good, very talented player. And I think a lot of Habs fans want to see exactly what this young defenseman is, and if he's going to live up to his draft billing, because he looks like a very good defensive prospect.
Yeah, he does. And, they mentioned the chat, which I forgot to mention live on the show, but he's also in a no contract jersey. Like, he just came back to practice. So he's at least a couple weeks away, I assume. I don't think the Canadiens want to rush him back. That seems inadvisable with your top-end defensive prospect, but you never know. So I would assume that somebody's getting called up here soon, and try to address that. All right, we wanted to talk about the Scheifele stuff, or Ty wanted to talk about it, because unfortunately, the coward Mark Scheifele did score tonight, as he seems to always do against the Montreal Canadiens. Jake Evans then later in the game took a shot way after the whistle, clearly trying to get under some skin, and we had that little Scheifele Evans standoff that got people chatting on socials. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Ty, because you wanted to bring up the Mark Scheifele thing. Let us have it. How do you feel?
Oh boy, yeah. I first, why? What makes Mark Scheifele a coward? I'm sure he would have fought back if he wasn't suspended for the rest of the series too. Mark Scheifele has dropped the gloves, at times when it's needed. I think I understand Montreal fans are very, very passionate. There's no question about that. But booing Mark Scheifele 5 years later. I get it's fun and stuff, but like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The suspension didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time. For as long as the suspension was. That's also it was all good for Montreal and what happened. Like this, our top center, our best forward was out of the series, and it hurt your fourth line center who was nowhere near the player that Jake Evans is today. He was just kind of coming into the league. The series result was a 4-0 sweep for Montreal. So you should be like Montreal fans should be literally like trying to shake hands with Mark Scheifele. Thank you for getting us to the Stanley Cup final. This season. And granted, Carey Price played unbelievable, and the Jets, definitely faltered after that game one when Scheifele was suspended. But all good things came from that hit for that Mark Scheifele delivered on Jake Evans, which a lot of non-Montreal fans would say was a fairly clean hit, and there would be no suspension if Jake Evans had his head up and wasn't going for the empty net goal and whatnot. And I'm kind of half trolling too because I see the chat's kind of going at it a bit. So I wanted to guess have some fun with it because Winnipeg fans, we don't think about it that much anymore. We've kind of moved on, I think. But I still kind of I guess was funny to see the people at the arena tonight booing Mark Scheifele every time touches the puck, and should have bet on Mark Scheifele scoring a goal tonight. I thought that was almost inevitable. I don't usually bet on sports, but I had some money left over, and I bet on the Jets puck line to win by 2 or more goals. That came in, but I definitely could have also bet on the Scheifele goal because I thought just the way people were talking, the way it was going. I think Scheifele scores a lot against Montreal if you look at his numbers.
As does Kyle Connor, I believe, like every game.
I don't know what that is. But yeah, I guess I'm interested also to hear, I guess, your take on things. I know I've even talked to my one teammate who's a Montreal fan. He doesn't like Scheifele. I get it. I just think I also like low-key. I'm not the biggest Scheifele fan, but it's not because of this hit that he made, 5 years ago. Anyways, here's my piece.
Okay, here I'll do my best to explain the Montreal side of things. So in that moment, Evans was actually playing wing on the first line. He was hanging on with Deneau and I think Gallagher as like the shutdown line after Thomas Tatar, I believe, was scratched because he had a bad playoffs 1 year with Vegas and got scratched for the entire year. And the Canadiens were like, we're doing the same thing. He had one bad game. Send him into the ether and never hear of Thomas Tatar again, even though he had multiple great seasons and continues to be a relatively decent player. But anyway, that's where Evans was playing. And the reason why people get so upset about it is because when you watch it at real-time speed and slow-mo, Scheifele had the time to poke the puck away and stop the empty net goal. But he chose to not do that and instead hit a guy after it was done and just absolutely blew him up. And the problem wasn't even just the hit, it was his reaction to it. And I'm trying to be like as nice as I can, and I'm gonna use a swear, so like earmuffs if you're a kid and don't want to hear a swear. But afterwards, Scheifele was a big baby bitch about it. And he remained like he would just whine and complained constantly. And also, and this would happen no matter what fan base it was, because every fan base has their people who will defend anything because it's their team. But the reaction of the Winnipeg fan base after about like, this isn't even a bad hit. It's not even, it shouldn't even be a suspension at all. Totally legal. It was, no, it wasn't even close to clean. It was a full on headshot after the goal was scored.
It was at the same time as it was at, I know that he should have slowed down, I guess, but like Jake Evans also had his head down trying to put the puck in the open, like it's a hockey play, and he hit him front on. Like usually if you hit the person with the puck, it is clean, but I know obviously it was, obviously it could have been, done a little bit differently. But I don't think it's even a penalty if Jake Evans isn't on the ice, unconscious. I think just how, like, that's a play that happens in hockey a lot. And I think that's where I guess, Winnipeg, and obviously I think just the length of the suspension too, because it didn't kind of line up with, obviously the NHL player safety has always been very inconsistent with their suspensions. I think the Jets thought it was going to be A 1 or 2 or 3 game at most, and that's because in the playoffs it's always double what it actually. If it's a 2 game, it means it's like a 4 game in the regular season. For a player that's had no history of suspension, anything like that, it did come as a big surprise when the suspension was handed down for the length that it was. So I think that caught a lot of Jets fans, and I think the organization as a whole, by surprise. But the end result though was Montreal got a sweep in that series, too. So I understand Jake Evans was playing on the first line, which is great. But Jake Evans is not a first line player. He's not the most
No.
talented. He's not the. But it was a very good trade off, for Montreal in that series. And I'm seeing Ty isn't gaining any fans tonight. LOL. Yeah, I understand. Like I'm kind of like half messing around, but like it's also like that's okay. Like we're here to have a little bit of fun and just I think it's been 5 years. I think we can talk about it now without too much hard feelings. We're Jets fans
Yes.
are okay. Like we're all good. We hope Jake Evans is having a really good career, and it looks like it. I think Montreal fans really want to keep this guy for in the long run. And for the Jets, we're liking Mark Scheifele's play this year. He's becoming more of a two-way player, less of a coward. More willing to stand up for himself. Still kind of a little bitch at times, but that's I guess the case with some of the high octane offensive players in the league for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing about Montreal is like we are obsessed with things that have happened in the past, right? Like that's just part of being a Montreal Canadiens fan. Like Zdeno Chara could be walking down the street today and would be booed on the street. Like people don't forget here. It's the way it goes. It goes back even further. Like Quiet Revolution shit. Oppression of the Francophones. People don't forget. It's on the license plate. We remember. So things don't get let go. Doesn't matter how long ago it was. It's always going to be brought up. And I think Mark Scheifele will be booed in Montreal until his final days in the league. And if he gets a hockey job after, probably booed if they show him in the stands or the press box. It's just the way Montreal is. All right. We're going to shift gears here, and I want to throw out a theory on officiating because we haven't talked about it yet, but obviously the officiating tonight was tilted one way. Wasn't really reflective of the play. Not saying there weren't penalties that like the penalties should have been called that were called. Yes. I just think Montreal deserved a chance. Not that their power play would have done anything, as it's been garbage lately anyway, but I have a theory about how penalties are called in certain kinds of games, and we're going to talk about that in a second. And then after that, we'll get to the Q&A and talking about the Briar as well. But before we do, I got to show you all an ad for Le Saint Motel, our other sponsor that's come aboard this year, and it's adjacent to Inchu, so go check it out in Chateau Saint-Ambroise here in Sud-West Montreal. Looking to make awesome memories with your friends, take some promotional pictures or videos for your business? Check out Le Saint Motel in Montreal's Sud-West borough. It's an amazing selfie studio located in Montreal's historic Chateau Saint-Ambroise, right next to Inchu Bijou. It boasts 12 plus unique decors for you to enjoy and make memories with. Hop into their iconic heart-shaped ball pit or transport yourself back in time to Expo 67. Le Saint Motel can also come to you with mobile decor setups available to rent for events, including setup and takedown, or you can head to lesaintmotel.com right now for more details, or to check out their amazing decors that are always being updated. Now, let's get back to the show, but before you do, make sure you subscribe to Game Over Montreal, Game Over Network, and smash like on this video because it really helps us out. All right, we are back. So I have a theory about NHL officiating, and it's not that like it's biased against one team or another or anything like that. I think that's mostly nonsense. Even though Leafs fans will insist that NHL player safety is biased against them, which actually they have a lot of receipts for, but I still don't believe for some reason. I don't know, maybe it is, but who knows? Anyway, I think teams that play like quote unquote big boy hockey intrinsically get away with more stuff. And there's no way to really track it with the data that we currently have because we only look at infractions for and against, and we don't actually have any metrics for missed infractions. And where the line should be. Like it's a very nebulous thing. But whenever we talk about things, like, we know things are called far more liberally, we'll say, in the playoffs. Things are you're allowed to get away with more. But refs will turn around and say, well, there's more penalties called in the playoffs, and players there's more on the line, so they play cleaner. So we're actually calling it more tightly. And you're like, that doesn't pass any smell test whatsoever of anybody who's ever watched a playoff game. Like, you were definitely allowed to cheat more in the playoffs. And I think teams that play that, like, if you're a very big team, a physically aggressive team, a forechecking team, you get away with more. It doesn't necessarily mean that your penalties for and against are going to be in your favor, but there are fewer penalties called in the game compared to the number of infractions. And I think that's something that the Bruins knew a lot when they were at their peak. They knew that they could basically do whatever they wanted, and the refs would only call so much. Because once you get too many, the refs aren't going to call 25 penalties on you in a game. You can push through that and continue moving on. It's like the Donald Trump style of politics, but in hockey, right? Just break all the rules, and sometimes it'll come back against you, but you've broken so many that you're going to win, right? And I'm not saying that the Jets are a dirty team, but because they play that big style hockey, I think there are games like this where even if the flow of play was generally even and probably both teams committed around the same number of infractions, the other team is the one that gets called more often, because in order to knock down like the bigger player, you clearly had to have gone over the line or cheated or something. So there's more likely going to be a call. Does that make sense?
Yeah, now that you're kind of talking about it, I kind of agree with you. Like, that's kind of how refs maybe like not really consciously call, but like it's just kind of like flow of the game and how like what teams play the a team's playing style, or their I think it does affect the penalty call, just like the number of penalties called in a game. I think, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And a team like Montreal, you kind of see all of their infractions, and they're a lot more visible to me watching on TV, and probably to the refs. While the Jets, while I think I didn't see many blatant penalties. There were a couple of things that I noticed that definitely could have been called. If it wasn't, like you said, like the Jets that play that big boy hockey, and not just the Jets, but other teams. So that, yeah, I think there's definitely some truth to that. I'd like to see maybe some more. It definitely showed a little bit tonight. You could say in this game, because like I said, just Montreal plays a certain way. Their penalties looked very blatant, very obvious, while the Jets, they don't look as obvious, but they're there and could be called, but they seemingly get missed for whatever reason.
Yeah, I feel like there was the Jack Eye one. That's like a penalty that I would want my team to take every single time, right? Because if he doesn't take that penalty, the hook in the first period there, it's an easy tapping goal. Like, you have to take that penalty. So that doesn't bother me. I felt like the Carrier one in the third was a little bit BS, where, like, I understand like the reasoning for calling it, where like one player comes in from behind, they click legs, sure, that's a trip. But in the state of the game and the impact on the play, I feel like that was more just two players bumping into each other than like an intentional trip. And when you have one team that's like dominated the puck for an entire period, and then you get that kind of call, it's going to build frustration in any fan base. And I feel like that's the frustration with like hockey in general and the officiating in the NHL. And every team has experienced that moment, right? Where you're like surging and your team is like building momentum, and then it's just this like stupid call. And some people are super frustrated at the player for the infraction. Some people get frustrated at the refs. Some people just smash their TV because they've got anger issues, but I feel like those kinds of against the flow calls, unless they're super obvious, can really drive a wedge. And in a game where it's like really tightly officiated, and let's be real, the penalties didn't really affect the game today at all. Like all the scoring was at even strength or with the net empty. But there's always going to be that lingering feeling when a team gets zero, that especially when the game was relatively even, they earned a shot, right? But yeah, I agree that the Jets weren't like out there cheating their butts off or anything, but there were some infractions that could have been called.
There were, and I was kind of waiting. I thought the whole game I was kind of waiting for, not even an even up call. I just thought at some point Montreal would get a power play, and we were going to see Patrick Laine in that shot. We didn't get that tonight. I think Jets fans
Nope.
were, maybe a little bit disappointed that it didn't come. But yeah, very surprising Montreal didn't get a power play tonight, because there are definitely some things that could have been called. And I agree, like the Carrier penalty was maybe a little bit ridiculous, is what someone in the chat said. So the Jets didn't capitalize maybe on the power play, but I think it still does kind of break up the flow of the game. And if Montreal was having a good string of shifts, it does kind of break up that flow, and then creates Montreal to kind of start again and start trying to build momentum shift by shift after the penalty expires, even if the Jets didn't score. But also, yeah, a good game by Montreal's penalty kill, not letting the best power play in the league score on them. So that's another bonus for, I guess, Montreal tonight. But I guess it doesn't matter a lot if you don't win in the end. But I guess small things to keep working at, because the PK and special teams are a huge factor and make or break making the playoffs. So I think if Montreal wants to really get in those playoff positions, special teams is going to have to get them there, because they win or lose hockey games, no doubt. So just a little positive there for the Habs.
Yeah, and that's kind of the weird thing about this game from the Montreal perspective, right? Is I feel like you can look at it every which way, and for the most part, be relatively happy with the overall performance, and still lost 4-1, which kind of stinks. But what can you do? All right. Before we go to the question and answer segment there in overtime, Ty wanted to tell a bit of a story about his run up to the Briar here, and some conversations that he had with his teammates. So Ty, over to you, my friend.
Yeah, so obviously, like we talked about at the beginning, like I'm headed to the Briar now, as Team Newfoundland. I'm not from Newfoundland. I'm from Winnipeg. And my teammates are all young guys around 25 years old, big sports fans. And I was always kind of curious, like if you're from Newfoundland, like which NHL team do you cheer for? Are they usually Habs fans or Leafs fans? And they're a mixture. Like my third, Ryan, he's a big Montreal Canadiens fan. He was wearing a Montreal Canadiens hat all week on the ice, and must have been lucky because we won. Our second, Daniel, is an Ottawa Senators fan, originally born in Ottawa. He was wearing an Ottawa Senators hat, throughout the week, and we won. That was awesome. And then Aaron, our lead, he's a huge Toronto Maple Leafs fan. Um, kind of can't stand the guy because of that, but he was wearing a Toronto Maple Leafs hat during the week. But we were not so hot at the beginning of the week, so after we lost our game, I said, "Hey, take off the Leafs hat," and we won 8 straight games after that. So that's part of it. And also, we're all, like I said, big hockey fans. They're all very knowledgeable about the game too, and about their players and stuff. And kind of after one of the early games, we're going out for a team meal because we had no more games left at the end of the day. We're all in the car, talking hockey, and it kind of gets on, kind of a bit of a heated argument between, Ryan, the Montreal fan, really talking up Nick Suzuki, and the Ottawa fan, talking up Tim Stutzle, and it kind of became a very heated, who's better, and it was very loud. It was very it seemed like we are kind of getting out some of our, maybe emotions or frustrations because the first couple of games of our event weren't going so well. I think it was obviously half jokingly, said. It was a little tongue in cheek too, but it was very intense. And Ryan was kind of on an island, the Montreal fan, because I think everybody else, was thinking that Tim Stutzle's, a better player, a player that you want, maybe in the playoffs over Nick Suzuki. So anyways, that kind of conversation And then the subsequent conversation that we had at the restaurant gave us a bit of a pep talk, kind of got us on the right path, and we ended up winning 8 straight games and won the event. And we continued, talking about that Suzuki Stutzle was kind of like a running, inside joke for, for the rest of the week. So I want to kind of hear your opinion and the chat's opinion on what they think about Suzuki compared to Stutzle, because it was very, one-sided. It was kind of Ryan against the world there, thinking that Suzuki is better than Stutzle, long-term and this season.
I think Stutzle is younger, right? Am I right about that?
Yes. He's definitely a year or two younger. Yeah.
Yeah, he's 23. I think Suzuki is 25 this year. So I would say that it would be fair to say that long term, Stutzle is like in an advantageous position because Stutzle entered the NHL younger, was a higher point producer younger. However, as of right now in this moment, if I were to choose one player to compete for Stanley Cup, and I liked Tim Stutzle a lot, but he hasn't been the same guy offensively that he was in 22-23 for a couple of years now. He's better this year than he was last year, but not crazy level of goals. So like, I don't know if he's going to get back to that 39 goal season again. If he's just a 20 to 25 goal scorer, then I think he's very much in the wheelhouse of Nick Suzuki on the offensive side. And frankly, Suzuki's bona fides the last 2 years are better. Suzuki, from last season through this season, let's see, I'm just counting this out. I think they show 20 spaces here. So among all forwards in the NHL, Suzuki is 18th in goals above replacement over the last 2 years, which is crazy. He's right below Jason Robertson, right below Jack Eichel. Like, he's in the same range as Jesper Bratt, Alexander Barkov. So, like, Suzuki, I think the big issue with him is that early on in his career, he could do offense or he could do shutdown defense, but he couldn't do both at the same time. And I think a lot of folks still see him as that guy, except for now, for the last 2 seasons, he's like flirting with a point per game and also putting up Selke level defense in an excruciatingly taxing role with the Montreal Canadiens. So I don't know. Like, I think it's tighter than Ottawa Senators fans would want to admit, but Nick Suzuki has really taken serious steps over the last couple of years, and he is fantastic. Like, he is a hell of a player. I think any team in the NHL would be extraordinarily happy to have Nick Suzuki. And also, he's the captain. Like, he handles the Montreal market. I feel like that's something that can't really be underestimated. The pressure level is just way different in Montreal, and to be the captain at such a young age and not just not miss a step, but to get better, it's really impressive. So I don't know. I think right now I would give it to Suzuki, but long term I would not be making a choice at this moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's kind of what Ryan, my third, was talking about. Until we pose this, I'll pose you the same question, then I'll pose it to the rest of the chat. It kind of was like, okay, yes, all, very. I agree. Suzuki's been really good this last 2 years. He's putting up really good numbers. He's very good two-way. But I just asked him point blank, would you trade if you were the Habs GM and you had the offer for Suzuki for Stutzle? Would you take it? He folded like a cheap suit and said, "Yeah, make that trade like tomorrow." Thinking long term, thinking this and that. So I ask the chat. I ask you, would you trade Nick Suzuki for Tim Stutzle 1-for-1 if given the opportunity?
I may get flamed for this, especially from Senators fans. I would not. I like Suzuki's contract. I don't think it can be overestimated the fact that he's a captain at his age in Montreal. And Tim Stutzle, as much as like I like the guy, I really like the way he plays. I think in terms of like what he's able to accomplish in terms of playmaking, there are very few players in the league who can do what he can do. And as much as I make fun of the diving, that wins games, man. Like, he draws penalties and it wins games. I really like Tim Stutzle, but I would not trade Nick Suzuki for him right now. Just the gap in defensive quality is too big, and the gap in offensive quality is not large. So I don't know. I couldn't do it. I couldn't trade Nick Suzuki, the captain of the Montreal Canadiens, for Tim Stutzle because there's just not as much to be gained as what you would lose, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Ryan, if you're listening, you got I think it sounds like you got some support here, which is nice because you didn't have it much during the week, but I think there's a lot of good points made. And I do like I'm kind of indifferent now on the topic. I think they're both exceptional hockey players. I
They
think
are.
right now Nick Suzuki's been better the last 2 years. I still don't think we've seen anywhere close to Tim Stutzle's best.
Fair.
Even Brady Kachuk's been off, this season. So I'm kind of like in Ottawa, still kind of a good young team as well. So I'm kind of very curious to see, not just Suzuki and Montreal, but also in Ottawa, seeing what those players, what they're going to become. Because you really don't know. It's kind of a gamble because it kind of could go one way or the other. I guess how elite, how highly talented, how much it's gonna show out on the ice. Like you said, Stutzle's only 23, very young. Suzuki's 25. We still don't know exactly all that we have, but it's very impressive. Suzuki's a young captain, kind of excelling in the National Hockey League. So totally get why you wouldn't make the trade. And yeah, I think a lot of your Habs fans here agree with you, no doubt.
Yeah, it seems like the emotion is strong for Nick Suzuki, which I get. I feel like having watched this rebuild and watching Suzuki gut through it all too, it would be such a gut punch to have him go through all of that and be the guy who never missed a game during COVID, even when the Canadians had like 14 players one game that they iced against Florida, and he's always the guy. He's always the first choice for like every situation to trade him right before you're actually descending towards the playoffs. That'd be a tough one emotionally, I think, for all of us. All right.
Your hypotheticals, yeah, all good.
Yeah, it is hypotheticals. It's fun. It's fun to do that kind of stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
And you figure out how much you value a player, right? Because Tim Stutzle is a damn good player. Our Game Over Ottawa folks are probably going to be in here and yelling at us later, but that's okay. Maybe I'll clip this and put it up so everyone can really dig into it. All right, let's switch over to our overtime segment where we can take some questions from the chat. Can't wait to chat with you all because it's always fun. You always bring up some cool stuff. But before we talk about that, I'm going to switch here and show you all our merch ad. If you scan the QR code that's on your screen right now, or if you're listening on the podcast, you can head to thegameovernetwork.com. You can see our merch store where you can support Game Over by wearing our stuff on your body or drinking from mugs with our logos on them. This is an old one that is not currently in the store. Our ones are actually much nicer than this one. Brady Chalice from Game Over Winnipeg, who is currently teaching English in, I think, Thailand this year. Hopefully he'll be back with us next year in more than just the merch design role. He's designed everything. He designed the mugs. He designed the hats that are super fun looking. We've got this sweater that I'm wearing right now. You can't really see. There we go. That's our Live and Die by the Goalie design. It's also got a design on the back. There's all sorts of cool designs to check out, and I highly recommend our toques too, because damn, it's cold out there, and it's good to stay warm. All right, let's hold on, that's the wrong thing to turn off. There we go. Let's head back here with Ty, and let's see if we got any questions here in the chat that aren't people trying to strangle him for being pro Mark Scheifele. I see Sebastian Jackson is here. Welcome, buddy. Glad to see you. And Brendan Labar from Game Over Winnipeg as well. I think he's dividing up each of Montreal and Winnipeg, getting one of Miller and Pettersson. Can we take Pettersson? I don't really want JT Miller on my team. Is that cool with you, Ty?
We already had a JT Miller and Blake Wheeler, and it didn't really go so well towards the end. So I think we'd also prefer, Pettersson. But maybe we'll flip a coin or rock paper scissors, because I think one that most teams would want, and then one that teams would want for a little bit, but probably not for a long time, in JT Miller.
Yeah, I hear that. Andrew Giesbrick says, for Ty, if you were GM, who do you prioritize this season, or is there a way that you can keep both of Ehlers and Velarde? That's tough.
Yeah, it's no question like Velarde's the RFA. Like you're keeping the younger guy by 5 years or so. So we definitely would want. I think we definitely will keep Velarde and sign him to whatever. I think if Ehlers wants to if he's actually open to re-signing here, I think the Jets are gonna throw him at least an $8.5 million contract offer for however many years. But salary, like cap wise, the cap is going up too. The cap's going up by quite a bit. So, the Jets do project to have, quite a little bit more cap space. That would mean that we don't, I guess, re-sign Neil Pionk then, which I'm, I guess, more than okay with. I know that
Yeah.
he's our, de facto number 2 defenseman after Josh Morrissey, but I think that we can almost replace him with an entry level contract in Elias Salamonson next year. I think that we have some, defensive prospects, or we can, get someone else that doesn't make, Neil Pionk's going to want to raise from $6 million, and some teams, sillily, I don't know, someone's going to pay him too much money, I think, in the offseason, and I kind of hope it's not the Jets. So if Pionk's willing to take a discount, take a bit of a pay cut, I would be fine with him to stay. But you have to prioritize Velarde and Ehlers first, because you really can't getting that high end offensive talent. It's very hard to do unless you trade for it. So you really got to keep these players in Winnipeg, because we know how hard it is for, to get players to sign, here in this city.
Absolutely. And those are two guys who, aside from being high end offensive players, also bring it like overall, like all over the ice, right? So like those are the guys you can break the bank for, and then you just deal with the consequences and find ways to make it work. And I know there's been some like speculation. I know that a lot of Habs fans would like Ehlers in Montreal, and I know he's friends with Patrick Laine, and that's something that people are latched onto. But I would be very shocked if, throughout all of the rumors that have always gone around with Nikolai Ehlers and the Jets not loving him as much as they should, that at this point in time that they actually move on. I feel like he's there for a while. We had another question here. Bernardo Sunier says, "How do we feel about Hudson playing on the right side?" So this is the first game. Obviously, not even the whole game particularly, because Guhle got hurt. He did get caught on one of the goals where he was below the goal line. Sorry, folks. But I think that was beyond just him. There was another miscommunication. I believe it was Dvorak failed to cover and get down low in the center position on that goal. So, I mean, could have happened better, but it was his first game. I think Hudson has the hockey IQ to continue trying that out, see what happens.
Yeah, I was kind of I won't say I was impressed with. I liked what Lane Hudson was kind of doing out on the ice. I'd say I didn't realize he was even playing on his other side. A couple of Jets defensemen have played on their offside, this year and haven't done quite as well. So I don't think you really want, Lane playing on his offside, too much, but it's another feather in his cap if he can be versatile like that, and not miss, too much of his game. I know he didn't score tonight, but I saw him doing his little head jukes and all of his spins and stuff. I saw what he was cooking out there. I know what he does. So I've been really impressed with Lane Hudson this season. I think you guys got a really, a very, kind of a not a Cale Makar, but like a very good young defensive prospect who's going to hopefully be in Montreal for a long time. So keep doing what you're doing, Lane Hudson.
Yeah, he's been incredibly impressive. I had very high expectations of Lane Hudson, and he's continually surpassed all of them for me. So the fact that he's doing it right now in his rookie year, it's really incredible. Let's see here. Brendan Rosen says, "One time I said out loud, who the F is Neil Pionk?" And I laughed out loud. Yeah, yeah. I remember when that trade happened. I was like, who? Because at that time, I think Pionk had played like maybe a season and a half in New York, and he was not great. And he's actually been considerably better with the Jets than he was with the Rangers. But yeah, that was an interesting trade. But the Jets have
Boxing up.
recovered well.
we had to he had pretty much a one-team trade list. Trouba. We could only really trade him to. I believe it was that's where he wanted to go, and the Jets, were nice about it and kind of granted his wish to go to New York.
And the Rangers were not nice about it in the end.
They were not. No, they were
Yeah.
not. So yeah, we also got Ville Heinola in that trade, who we don't really know
That's
we
right.
have yet because we don't play him on his. We only play him with Logan Stanley, who stinks, and then he's always on his wrong side. Like I think Jets fans really want to see Ville Heinola get a string of games like with a Colin Miller, like a decent I guess defensive partner to see what we have in him. He's younger than Stanley by 4 years. I think that's the thing that Jets fans are more frustrated about is all of the Logan Stanley playing time and all the lack of playing time. So if they're not going to play him though, it's time to move on and trade. Hopefully Logan, but if they have to trade Ville because they love something about Logan, his size, 6'7". I don't know. Yeah, that's something that irks Jets fans. But if that's the only thing irking us this year, it's I guess it's going pretty good.
Yeah, no kidding. There could definitely be worse things. Trinka in the chat jumps out there and says the only reason she knows who Pionk is because Spezza need him in the head. Got that big suspension. Yeah, that was crazy. I still can't believe Jason Spezza of all people did that because it was just he snapped, right? Because that whole situation. And that's why they were so harsh on him. And I feel like for some reason, like Leafs fans couldn't get it through their heads that the reason why it was so harsh on a first-time offender is because it was such a crazy freaking thing to do, such a crazy, dangerous, insane thing to do, and that it was Jason Spezza doing it. And they were like, we got to smack this guy because that is crazy. And for some reason, they couldn't really accept that, and it's a conspiracy instead. But that was a really bad knee in that.
And yet, Jets fans didn't really boo Jason Spezza after that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Get meaner, Jets fans. Come on.
I know.
Get with it.
Get with it, I guess.
Yeah, you got to be meaner, especially to Leafs fans. Like, boo everybody. Boo all the Leafs. That's what I mean, I guess there is that little rivalry between the Jets and the Leafs, right? So, lean in.
Hate the Leafs.
All right, that's all we got for you here tonight. Be safe out there. Be happy. I saw Sebastian Jackson said that his cousin got shot and is in the hospital. So all the love out to your family, Seb, and hope everybody recovers nicely. That's horrible news to see. But yeah, it's a scary world out there. Take care of yourself and take care of your neighbors. I highly suggest everybody learns how to defend themselves, as we keep on getting threatened with crazy stuff from crazy people down below. So enjoy yourselves. We'll see you on Thursday for Habs Wild, and for Game Over Winnipeg. Ty wins their next game.
Boston, 6 o'clock on Thursday.
There you go.
I'll see you guys after hopefully another win. The Jets are playing well right now, so hopefully we'll keep it going in Boston.
All right, let's go. Let's get it done. We'll see you there.
Take it easy, everybody. Cheers.